Europe's most powerful leader is losing political strength and could face defeat in the elections later this year. Huge crowds have flooded into the streets to protest against her refugee policy. And a new anti-immigrant political party is surging in popularity, echoing the US president.
The system is rigged, yes. Drain the swamp.
How did the German chancellor get into this mess? It all started 18 months ago. In the early summer of 2015, the war in Syria generated an exodus of biblical proportions. Hundreds of thousands of refugees flooded across the Aegean Sea to Greece and began walking to Central Europe. Many said they were headed to Europe's richest country, Germany, where some even had relatives. German Chancellor Angela Merkel had often spoken about fostering a welcome culture in her country, but she seemed uncertain about how to handle the approaching crisis.
Hallo, ich heiße Sie erstmal herzlich willkommen.
She appeared on a town hall TV program about immigration and encountered a young Palestinian girl whose family had not yet been accepted as refugees to Germany.
Ich weiß nicht, wie meine Zukunft aussieht, solange ich nicht wirklich weiß, dass ich hier bleiben kann.
At first, Merkel took a hard line about Germany not having room for all refugees.
Du bist ja ein unheimlich sympathischer Mensch, aber du weißt auch, in den palästinensischen Flüchtlingslagern im Libanon gibt es noch Tausende und Tausende. Und wenn wir jetzt sagen, ihr könnt alle kommen und ihr könnt alle aus Afrika kommen und ihr könnt alle kommen, das können wir auch nicht schaffen.
Then she was clearly moved when the girl started to cry.
Oh, komm.
The chancellor was obviously torn by her conflicting instincts and responsibilities. In her offices at the German Reichstag, there were emergency late-night meetings in which the estimated scale of the refugee wave kept growing. Stefan Meyer is a member of the German parliament and a key ally of Angela Merkel in the governing coalition.
We didn't expect such an influx. In the beginning of 2015, the expectations were to receive about 300,000 refugees in total in 2015. And then in middle of August, the new forecast was 800,000, and I have to admit this was really astonishing.
Merkel's critics reject any notion that the refugee crisis came as a surprise to her. Michael Sturmer is a conservative historian and senior editor of the Welt newspaper.
She was ill-prepared, and so was the government. The federal police had warned a year before of what would happen. After all, the war in Syria started in 2011. There was no surprise, but she was surprised, and then she panicked, and we lost control. And she put a friendly face on it and called it welcome culture, while the rest of the nation said, oh, for God's sake, we don't buy that.
In August of 2015, refugees arriving in Germany were bused to special shelters sprinkled across the country. The first resistance began to appear. Violent anti-immigrant protests began. Gangs of young men barring the road to stop the arrivals. Several refugee shelters were set on fire. Neo-Nazi groups were accused of the arson.
Certainly these images are a shame for Germany, and this can't be accepted.
Angela Merkel was shocked by the violent anti-immigrant protests. On August 26, 2015, to show solidarity with the victims, she made a visit to a refugee shelter in Heidenau that had been attacked. She was loudly booed by protesters. Some screamed that she was a traitor and a slut. The incident seemed to redouble her determination to welcome refugees.
I know about the scene, but if you are Chancellor of Germany or Prime Minister of Canada, your emotions have to be under control. You cannot be guided by your emotions.
And do you think that's what happened with her?
She's a control freak. But in this case, she did not control the situation, nor did she control her own emotions.
Wenn wir jetzt anfangen, uns noch entschuldigen zu müssen dafür, dass wir in Notsituationen ein freundliches Gesicht zeigen, dann ist das nicht mein Land.
On August 27th, the day after the Heidenau incident, a truck was found just off the Austrian Autobahn headed for Germany. Inside were 71 dead refugees who had smothered while being smuggled across European borders. On August 30th came the photograph of 3-year-old refugee Alan Kurdi washed up dead on the beach at Bodrum, Turkey. All these images and events made a big impression on Angela Merkel, and so she marched into her annual end-of-summer press conference on August 31st and made her historic pronouncement on the refugee issue. She began with a denunciation of the anti-immigrant demonstrators in Germany.
Folgen Sie denen nicht, die zu solchen Demonstrationen aufrufen. Es gibt keine Toleranz gegenüber denen, die die Würde anderer Menschen in Frage stellen.
Then the Chancellor uttered her landmark declaration.
Wir schaffen das.
We can do this. In the following days, Merkel opened Germany's borders to an estimated 850,000 refugees.
People started here with going on the streets.
Tatjana Festerling is an anti-immigration politician in the East German city of Dresden, which became a hotbed of resistance to Merkel's refugee policy. When Angela Merkel famously said, "We can do this," what was your response to that?
Who is we? Who is we? And she made up her mind. She was the one who made this decision to open our borders illegally. And now she puts responsibility to us, to ask the people. We didn't decide that.
There is no extra places for the refugees. There is no...
Of all the Syrian refugees who came to Germany in the summer of 2015, one in particular played a key role. His name is Ayaz Morad. He was studying English at Damascus University when the Syrian crisis began, and later decided that he had to lead his 2 sisters and other family members to safety as ISIS closed in on their village in northern Syria. His father was worried that his sisters would be raped.
So my father decided, when you want to go to travel, just take your sisters with you. I said, we can't do it.
Fleeing ISIS, Ayaz and his family members made their way from northern Syria over the border into Turkey and eventually to the coastal city of Izmir. There they paid a smuggler $1,200 a person for a place on a plastic inflatable dinghy. They set off at night in a boat like this for a 12-hour voyage. The seas soon became rough.
We got a lot of water into our plastic boat, and we tried to get it out with the plastic bags and with our shoes.
You're bailing with your shoes?
Yeah, it was very difficult, but we said if we won't do it, it will be, we will die here. The women and the kids, they were all praying, "Oh God, help us." It was very dangerous.
When the sinking boat finally came close to the Greek coast, they were saved by the Coast Guard. From Greece, Ayaz and his family made their way north through Serbia and into Hungary. They reached the train station in Budapest.
Where are you going? Where are you going?
At the beginning of September 2015, the Budapest train station had become a refugee camp. The Hungarian government refused to allow the refugees to board trains for Central Europe. Desperate migrants piled up on the train platforms. Ayaz and his friends had an idea. If there were no trains, they could just walk the 90 kilometers to the Austrian border. Ayaz got hold of a loudspeaker and convinced many people to join them.
We told them there is no trains to go to Austria or Germany. We should do something else. We can go and walk together. Nobody can stop us. Next day, we just collect all the people. 4,000 people, women, kids are all walking. And we just walk.
Word had passed of Merkel's announcement that Germany would welcome refugees. Ayaz set off on the march carrying a large picture of her.
She is now like my mother here, because the mother should do something in order to help her kids to carry them, and she forget about herself. And she did the same. She opened the door for us.
They marched across Hungary in the searing summer heat.
The Hungarian government was very bad with us, but the people were very good with us. They brought us a lot of food and drinks. It was very sunny, it was very hot.
Eventually, the Hungarian government provided buses to transport the refugees to the Austrian border.
And I said, welcome refugees, come on to us, we will help you. This was like a paradise.
When the refugees finally made it to Germany, they were met at the train station by large crowds of people with signs of welcome.
It was very, very nice. We just said we achieved it. We've done it.
Just as Ayaz Murad made it to Germany, rebellion against the government's welcome of refugees was about to explode. When Angela Merkel said, "We can do this," many Germans said, "No, we cannot." The strongest resistance to the Merkel refugee policy began here in the eastern German city of Dresden. The demonstrations that popped up in Dresden were organized by the group Pegida, which stands for Patriotic Europeans Against the Islamization of the West. These protests were held weekly and sometimes attracted up to 40,000 people. About 200,000 Germans reportedly joined Pegida's Facebook group. Tatiana Festerling was one of Pegida's leading voices.
I fear Islamization because we see it in many parts of Germany. We already see Islamized regions.
You feel that Muslims are taking over?
Yeah, yes. Because we are so weak and they are so strong and they are so violent and they, we are the thinkers and we are arguing and we are the logical, the more rational type, and they're acting.
I think a lot of people would listen to this interview and think she is racist and xenophobic and proud of it.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care if this is racism in the opinion of some green or leftist or of these Soros or, I don't know, no border, no nation ideologists, then I don't care.
The Pegida movement has been mostly confined to the former East Germany, which historically has had very few immigrants. The region has also struggled economically in the 26 years since German reunification. Now, Pegida supporters have flooded into a new anti-immigrant political party, Alternative for Germany. The party's charismatic leader is Frauke Petry, a former East German chemist who did her postgraduate work in Britain. In the last midterm election, the party astonished political observers by making strong gains, even in Angela Merkel's home constituency. In a controversial interview when the German crisis broke out in 2015, Frauke Petry insisted that German border guards should be allowed to use their weapons to stop migrants from illegally crossing into the country. When you talk about German border guards using weapons against refugees, are you trying to send them some kind of message? Don't come here, you may be shot? What was the purpose of that?
If you read the interview that I gave, I was asked about possibilities to secure the German border, and I cited a German law that, as ultima ratio, also allows the use of weapons. Nothing more I did, and media created a scandal from it. If it's not possible in a democratic society to cite the laws that exist, then I think we do have a problem.
Are you appealing to the same kind of xenophobic people that we saw supporting Pegida?
Well, what do you mean by xenophobic?
Well, that they hate foreigners. They don't like foreigners.
Well,
they're protesting against foreigners.
Why do you think we do that?
You say there should be no minarets. There should be no Sharia law or Muslim veiled women.
But now you talk about Islam. Now you don't talk about foreigners. So what are we talking about?
Well, now I'm talking about Muslims, and I guess I worry that you are encouraging Islamophobia. Do you reject that?
Well, how come you think that? When we talk about religion, we think we should openly discuss openly the differences and the problems connected to that. There's nothing xenophobic about it, and I think AfD contributed very valuable material to this discussion, and we will have to have this discussion in Germany because we have serious integration problems connected to religious background.
Please raise your...
When we come back, Alternative for Germany gets a boost from the election of Donald Trump. Ayaz Murad and his family have now been accepted as refugees to Germany.
Wir werden sehen, ob sie alle recht hatten.
Amadius setzte sich erst
Ayaz has had 16 months of language lessons.
durch nach dem Rundfunk.
He says he now speaks German better than he speaks English.
Ja, gut, danke. Bis dahin erstmal.
Okay.
Und wenn es nicht funktionieren sollte,
He attends special job fairs for refugees at which major German companies are recruiting new workers.
Nicht weiter studieren.
He is hoping to find a job in the information technology sector.
Und dann bin ich jetzt in Deutschland gekommen.
But several major events have set back the cause of refugees in Germany. First, there were the New Year's Eve sexual attacks on women during celebrations in Cologne and several other German cities. Those arrested were mostly North African immigrants who have been in Europe for years. But recent refugees were widely blamed. Then came the terrorist attack on the Berlin Christmas market. Again, the man responsible was a Tunisian who had been in Europe for years. But again, the incident was blamed on Angela Merkel's refugee policy. The Alternative for Germany referred to the Berlin victims as Merkel's dead and claimed that refugees were bringing ISIS-sponsored terrorism.
They told us that we are the terrorists, but actually I'm a victim of ISIS. I'm a normal person. I just want a safe place to live, to study, to sleep. Yeah.
Another boost for the anti-Muslim Alternative for Germany came with the election of Donald Trump in the United States.
So yes, we see, at least in rough pictures, what happened, and we see that many of the reasons why people voted for Trump find the parallel in Europe.
Has the Trump victory had a significant impact in European politics?
Certainly. It becomes acceptable. What is acceptable in society has changed.
You're saying the threshold has been lowered?
The threshold of brutal language, of hatred, open hatred, has been lowered, absolutely.
And that has an effect here?
Well, if it happens in America, it can easily happen here.
German opinion polls show a decline in popularity for Angela Merkel, while the populist Alternative for Germany party is gaining ground quickly and will likely have a strong representation in the next parliament, about 20% of the seats. In January, all the right-wing European anti-immigrant parties met in Koblenz, Germany. They all paid tribute to the election of Donald Trump, and they now feel the tide of history is on their side. Terence McKenna, CBC News.